For 18 days, the Korean Mafia boss searched the entire city for his missing mother, unaware she was sleeping in a stranger's house. The stranger had been hiding her, feeding her, protecting her, with no idea who she had just protected. Then a poor black waitress looked at his poster and whispered, "Sir, that old woman lives with me. If you love emotional stories with unexpected twists, stay with me until the end. You won't regret it, and don't forget to like." The rain hammered against the windows of the back alley diner as Nyla Reed wiped down the same table for the third time that hour. Her hands moved mechanically, but her mind was elsewhere, fixed on the elderly woman sleeping in her tiny apartment 3 blocks away. The woman she'd found wandering in the rain 2 weeks ago, confused and trembling, muttering words in Korean that Nyla couldn't understand. Nyla had done what felt right. She'd taken the old woman home, given her warm soup, let her sleep in the only bed while Nyla took the floor. She tried asking questions gently, searching for family, for answers, but the woman's memory seemed fractured, coming in pieces like shattered glass. The diner door crashed open. The temperature in the room dropped instantly. Conversations died mid-sentence. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Nyla looked up and felt her breath catch in her throat. The man who entered wasn't tall by extraordinary standards, but he filled the space like a storm cloud. Jang Tae-rin moved with the kind of precision that came from absolute control, his black coat dripping rainwater onto the worn linoleum. His face was beautiful in a cold, carved way, sharp cheekbones and dark eyes that seemed to see through everything they touched. But it was the exhaustion beneath that beauty that made Nyla's chest tighten. This man looked like he hadn't slept in days. Behind him, 3 men in dark suits positioned themselves near the door. They didn't need to touch their weapons. Everyone in that diner knew who they were looking at. Chairman Jae, the man who controlled the southern districts of Busan, the man whose name parents whispered to scare children into obedience. Tae-rin walked to the counter, his movements slow, deliberate. He pulled something from inside his coat, a poster. With shaking hands that betrayed the iron control in his face, he unfolded it and placed it on the counter. Nyla's heart stopped. The photograph showed an elegant woman in her 60s, silver hair pulled back, wearing a traditional hanbok. Her smile was warm, maternal. Beneath the photo, text in Korean and English, missing. SEONHWA. Reward for information. It was her. The woman sleeping in Nyla's bed. "Have you seen this woman?" Tae-rin's voice was quiet, but it cut through the silence like a blade. He wasn't asking the room. He was asking the universe, and the desperation in that question made Nyla's throat tight. The diner owner, Mr. Kim, shook his head quickly, not meeting Tae-rin's eyes. "No, Chairman. I'm sorry. I haven't seen her." Tae-rin's jaw clenched. For just a moment, the mask slipped, and Nyla saw raw anguish flash across his features before he buried it again beneath ice. "If anyone see her," he said, his voice rough, "contact this number immediately." He placed a card beside the poster. Any information, anything at all. He turned to leave, and Nyla knew she had seconds to make a choice that would change everything. "Sir." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but in that silent room it rang like a bell. Tae-rin stopped, turned. Those dark eyes found hers, and Nyla felt the full weight of his attention like a physical force. Behind him, his men shifted, hands moving toward concealed weapons. "That old woman," Nyla said, her voice steadier now, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. "She lives with me." The world seemed to tilt sideways. Tae-rin crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides. His hand shot out, gripping the edge of the table Nyla stood beside, not touching her but close enough that she could feel the tremor running through him. "What did you say?" His voice was dangerous now, barely controlled. "The woman in that photo," Nyla repeated, meeting his eyes even though everything in her screamed to look away. "I found her 2 weeks ago, wandering in the rain. She's been staying with me. She's safe." "You're lying." But there was no conviction in his words, only desperate hope fighting with disbelief. "I'm not." Nyla pulled out her phone with trembling fingers, scrolling to a photo she'd taken 3 days ago. The elderly woman sitting at Nyla's small kitchen table, smiling softly over a cup of tea. Tae-rin's breath left him in a rush. He gripped the phone like it was the only solid thing in a collapsing world, his eyes locked on the image. When he looked up, tears gleamed in his eyes, though none fell. "Where?" The word came out broken. "My apartment. It's not far." Nyla hesitated, then added gently, "She may not remember you right away, Her memory. It comes and goes. Something in Taerin's expression cracked. He closed his eyes, took a shaking breath, then straightened. When he opened them again, the Mafia boss was back, but the sun still bled through at the edges. Take me to her. Now. The drive through Nyla's neighborhood should have taken 10 minutes. Felt like 10 hours. Taerin sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost brushed. The rain had softened to a drizzle, but the streets were slick and dark. How did you find her? Taerin asked, his voice tight. I was walking home from my second shift, Nyla said quietly. It was raining harder than this. She was sitting on a bench, soaked through, talking to herself. She looked so lost. Nyla glanced at him. I couldn't just leave her there. You took a stranger into your home. She needed help. You could have called the police. I did. They took a report but said they couldn't do much without identification. She didn't have any papers on her. Nyla's voice softened. She called me Minji. I don't know who that is, but she seemed to trust me, so I just took care of her. Taerin was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Minji was my sister. She died when I was 12. Nyla's heart clenched. I'm sorry. My mother has been looking for her for 30 years. He said it like a confession, like a wound that never healed. She never accepted that Minji was gone. After my father died, her mind started to slip. Small things at first, then bigger things. But she was still my mother. Still herself. And now. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. They climbed the narrow stairs to Nyla's third-floor apartment. The building was old, the paint peeling but clean. Taerin's eyes tracked every detail. This place so far removed from his world of power and blood. At the door, Nyla paused. Please, she said softly, don't frighten her. Let me go in first. Taerin nodded, not trusting his voice. Nyla unlocked the door and stepped inside the small space she called home. One room that served as bedroom, living room, and kitchen. A bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. But it was warm. And it smelled like the jasmine tea she'd been making for the old woman every morning. On the narrow bed pushed against the wall, Seo Eunhwa sat wrapped in Nyla's favorite blanket, looking out the rain-streaked window. She turned when she heard the door, and her face lit up with that same gentle smile. Minji, you're home, she said in accented English. I was worried. It's me, Mrs. Hannah, Nyla said, using the name the woman had given her. I brought someone to see you. She stepped aside, and Taerin entered the apartment. For a moment, mother and son simply stared at each other across that small room. Then Eunhwa's expression changed. Confusion flickered across her features, followed by recognition, followed by something that looked like fear. No, she whispered. No, you can't be here. They'll find you. Taerin crossed the room and dropped to his knees beside the bed, his hands reaching for hers with infinite gentleness. Iyama. It's me. It's Taerin. Tears spilled down Eunhwa's cheeks. Her hands, fragile and spotted with age, came up to touch his face as if confirming he was real. My son. My boy. You got so tall. I'm here, Iyama. I'm here. His voice broke on the words. I've been looking for you. 18 days. I've been searching everywhere. 18 days. Eunhwa's brow furrowed. It's only been, but the men, they took me from the garden. They put me in the dark place. Taerin's entire body went rigid. Behind Nyla, one of his men stepped forward, listening intently. What men, Iyama? Who took you? They wore masks. They wanted you to give them something. Territory, they said. The eastern ports. Her hands clutched at his coat. But I ran. When they were fighting with each other, I ran. I just ran and ran until I couldn't remember where I was running from. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Nyla watched Taerin's face transform from grief to something that made her blood run cold. This was the man people feared. This was Chairman J. Who betrayed me? He asked, his voice soft and deadly. Eunhwa's eyes clouded. There was a voice I knew. Someone who used to come to dinner. But I can't. She pressed her hands to her temples, frustrated. I can't remember. It's okay, Iyama. It's okay. Taerin pulled her into his arms, and this hardened criminal held his mother like she was made of spun glass. You're safe now. I promise you're safe. Over his mother's head, his eyes found Nyla's. In them she saw gratitude and something else. Something that made her chest tight and warm. You saved her life, he said simply. Nyla shook her head. I just did what anyone would do. No, Taerin stood slowly, helping his mother settle back against the pillows. Most people would have looked away, especially in this city, especially from someone who couldn't even tell them her name. He turned to face her fully. You protected the most important person in my world when I couldn't. That debt can never be repaid. I don't want payment, Nyla said firmly. I'm just glad she's okay. Nevertheless, Taerin pulled out his phone, speaking rapid Korean to someone on the other end. Then he turned back to Nyla. I'm bringing you both to my estate. It's the only place I can guarantee safety. Wait, I can't just. They know she escaped, Taerin said, his voice hard. When they realize she's alive, they'll come looking. And when they do, they'll find you too. Everyone who helped her becomes a target. Fear shot through Nyla's chest. I have work tomorrow. I have bills. Already handled. He said it with the casual authority of someone used to reshaping reality to his will. Whatever you need, it's done. But right now you need to trust me. Both of you. Nyla looked at Eunhwa, who reached out and took her hand. Minji, you should listen to him. My son, he's a good boy. He'll keep us safe. Something in Nyla's chest cracked at the old woman calling her by a dead girl's name, at the trust in those faded eyes. She looked back at Taerin and nodded. Okay, but I need to pack some things for her. She'll want her tea. The smallest smile ghosted across Taerin's face. Pack everything she needs. We have time. But they didn't. As Nyla gathered clothes and the elderly woman's few belongings, one of Taerin's men burst through the door, his face grave. Chairman, we have movement. 3 cars approaching from the south. Armed. Taerin's expression didn't change, but the air around him seemed to sharpen. How long? 5 minutes. Maybe less. Get them out through the back. Take the 4th route. He was already moving, shrugging out of his coat and draping it over his mother's shoulders. To Nyla he said, There's a fire escape. My men will take you to a secure location. Don't ask questions, just go. What about you? The words were out before Nyla could stop them. Taerin looked at her, really looked at her, and something passed between them. Understanding. Recognition. I'm going to handle this. And then I'm going to find out who did this to my mother. You'll get yourself killed. I've survived worse. He turned to his men. Go. Now. The next minutes were a blur. Strong hands guiding Nyla down the fire escape. Eunhwa clinging to her arm. The old woman surprisingly spry despite her age and confusion. They piled into a black sedan that materialized from nowhere. And then they were moving through Busan's rain-slicked streets at terrifying speed. Behind them, gunfire cracked through the night. Nyla twisted in her seat, looking back at her building, her heart in her throat. He's still in there. We have to. Chairman's orders, the driver said calmly, as if they weren't fleeing from armed men. He'll meet us at the estate. If he lives, Nyla whispered. Eunhwa squeezed her hand. He always lives, Minji. My son, he's like his father. Too stubborn to die. The estate rose from the coastal cliffs like something from a dream, all modern glass and traditional stone, overlooking the black waters of the Korean Strait. Security was everywhere but invisible, blending into the architecture. They were ushered inside by silent staff, into a warm room that smelled of pine and rain. Please make yourselves comfortable, a middle-aged woman said in careful English, bowing to them both. The chairman will return soon. But an hour passed. Then 2. Nyla sat with Eunhwa in a room larger than her entire apartment, watching the old woman drift in and out of sleep, stroking her hair and trying not to think about bullets and blood, and the cold look in Taerin's eyes when he'd realized someone had betrayed him. She must have dozed off herself, because she woke to the sound of doors opening. She jerked upright, heart pounding. Taerin stood in the doorway, alive but changed. There was no blood on him, which somehow made it worse. He'd washed away any evidence, but the violence clung to him like a second skin. His eyes found hers immediately, and she saw exhaustion there and something darker. Satisfaction. It's done, he said quietly. What's done? But Nyla already knew. The men who came for you are gone. The ones who took my mother will be gone by morning. He said it like he was discussing the weather. No one will threaten either of you again. Eunhwa stirred in her sleep but didn't wake. Taerin moved to her side, kneeling as he had before, watching her breathe with an intensity that made Nyla's throat tight. How do you live like this? She asked softly. Always looking over your shoulder. always ready for violence. I don't live like this, Tarin said, still watching his mother. I survive like this. There's a difference. He looked up at Nyla then, and she saw something vulnerable in that gaze. But you live. You saw someone who needed help, and you helped them. No calculations. No wondering what it would cost you. You just did what was right. That's just being human. No, he stood, moving closer to her. That's being extraordinary. In my world, kindness is weakness. Compassion is liability. But you looked at my mother and saw a person who needed help. Not a tool. Not a burden. Just someone who mattered. Nyla's pulse quickened. They were standing too close now, close enough that she could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes, close enough to feel the heat radiating from him despite the coldness he tried to project. She does matter, Nyla said. Every person matters. Then you're braver than me, Tarin said quietly. Because I stopped believing that a long time ago. Maybe you just forgot. Maybe you needed someone to remind you. Something shifted in his expression. Maybe I did. They stood there in the quiet room, the space between them charged with something neither of them could name yet. Then Tarin stepped back, breaking the moment. There's a room prepared for you. My mother will stay in the East Wing with round-the-clock care. You'll have your own space, your own freedom. This isn't a prison. And what am I supposed to do here? I can't just hide forever. You're not hiding. You're safe. There's a difference. He paused. And you're not a prisoner. You can leave whenever you want. But I would sleep better knowing you're protected. Why do you care? Nyla challenged. You got your mother back. I'm just the stranger who happened to help. Tarin's jaw tightened. For a long moment he didn't speak. Then, you're not just anything. Not anymore. He left before she could ask what he meant. The next days fell into a strange rhythm. Nyla spent her mornings with Unhwa, who was clearer now with proper rest and medication. The old woman's memories were still fractured, but she remembered more each day. She talked about her son, the boy he'd been before violence hardened him. She talked about her daughter gone too soon. She talked about a life that felt like a dream. And she watched Nyla with knowing eyes. He looks at you differently, Unhwa said one afternoon as they sat in the garden. Real garden this time, not the memory she'd been taken from. My son, he doesn't let people close. But you're already close. He's just grateful, Nyla protested, but even she could hear the uncertainty in her voice. Gratitude doesn't make a man's hands shake. Fear does. And my Tarin, he hasn't feared anything in years. Until you. That doesn't make sense. Unhwa smiled, that same gentle smile that had made Nyla trust her in the rain. Love never does, child. Not the real kind. Nyla's heart stuttered. It's not like that. We barely know each other. You know he's a killer. You know he's dangerous. And you're still here. Unhwa's hand covered hers. That's not fear or obligation. That's curiosity. That's the beginning of understanding. And understanding, Minji, that's how the strongest loves start. Please don't call me that, Nyla said gently. I'm not your daughter. I know. Unhwa's eyes were clear now, heartbreakingly clear. But you remind me that kindness still exists. That people can still surprise us. That my son, maybe, can still be saved. Saved from what? From becoming the thing he pretends to be. That night, Nyla couldn't sleep. She wandered the estate's halls, drawn by some instinct she didn't understand to the study where light still burned despite the late hour. Tarin sat behind a massive desk, paperwork spread before him, but his eyes were unfocused. He looked up when she appeared in the doorway, and something in his expression softened. Can't sleep? He asked. Too much quiet. I'm used to street noise. A ghost of a smile. I can have someone play traffic sounds if that would help. Nyla laughed despite herself. That's not what I meant. She stepped into the room, drawn by the strange intimacy of finding him like this, unguarded. Your mother's doing better. I know. The doctor says her memory might return fully with time. Or it might not. His fingers drummed against the desk. Either way, I have her back. Because of you. You keep saying that. Because it's true. He stood, moving around the desk to face her properly. Do you understand what would have happened if you hadn't found her? If you'd walked past that bench, told yourself it wasn't your problem. Someone else would have helped. No, the word was flat certain. They wouldn't have. I know this city. I know these people. They would have looked away, called the police maybe, but they wouldn't have opened their home. They wouldn't have given up their bed. They wouldn't have learned to make her tea just the way she likes it. Heat crept up Nyla's neck. How did you know about the tea? She told me. Said you make it perfectly now, even though you had to practice because you don't drink it yourself. His voice dropped. You did that. For a stranger who couldn't even remember her own name. She deserved kindness. And you deserved safety. A normal life. Not to be dragged into my world of blood and betrayal. Nyla took a step closer. Maybe I was already in that world. You don't grow up black and poor in any city without understanding danger. Without learning to read people to know who to trust. Another step. And maybe I chose to stay because I understand more than you think. Tehran's breath caught. You should be afraid of me. I was. That first night in the diner I was terrified. She was close enough now to see his pulse jumping in his throat. But then I saw you with your mother. I saw you break. I saw you put her needs before your empire, before your reputation. And I realized something. What? The word was barely a whisper. You're not the monster you pretend to be. You're just a man trying to protect what he loves. Even if it means becoming something terrible. Tehran's hand came up, trembling, to cup her face. His thumb traced her cheekbone with a gentleness that contradicted everything she knew about him. You see too much. Or maybe I see exactly enough. He kissed her then, and it was nothing like Nyla expected. Not demanding or possessive. It was desperate and questioning, like he was asking permission even as he took it. Like he was terrified she would disappear if he held too tight. Nyla kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. This man who commanded armies, who made grown men tremble, who could destroy empires with a word. He was shaking in her arms like he'd never been touched gently in his life. Maybe he hadn't. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Tehran rested his forehead against hers. This is dangerous. Not just physically. If people know you matter to me, let them know, Nyla said fiercely. I'm not afraid of your world, Tehran. I'm afraid of walking away and wondering what could have been. You should walk away. Save yourself. From what? From you. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. You already saved me. The moment you let me see you break, you saved me from believing powerful men can't feel. From believing kindness is wasted. From believing people can't change. I haven't changed. Liar. She smiled and watched his expression crack open. The man who walked into that diner would have taken your mother and disappeared. He wouldn't have made sure I was protected. He wouldn't be standing here now, trying to convince me to leave for my own good. That man was all ice. But you. She touched his chest over his heart. You let me in. That's change. Tehran caught her hand, pressed it firmer against his heart. I don't know how to do this. How to be what you need. Then we'll figure it out together. The weeks that followed were a revelation. Tehran ran his empire with the same cold precision, but Nyla saw the cracks now. Saw him hesitate before ordering violence. Saw him search for alternatives. Saw him choose mercy when rage would have been easier. He was trying. For her. For his mother. For the man he might have been in another life. And Nyla learned his world too. The careful hierarchies. The unspoken rules. The way respect and fear intertwined until they became indistinguishable. She didn't judge it. Didn't try to change it overnight. She just witnessed it, and in witnessing helped him see it clearly too. The diner where they'd first spoken, Tehran bought it quietly, installed new equipment, tripled Mr. Kim's salary. When Nyla confronted him, he shrugged. That's where I got my mother back. It's sacred ground now. You can't just buy everything that means something to you. Can't I? But he was smiling when he said it, that rare, genuine smile that made him look years younger. He secured her family too, sending money to her mother in Atlanta, making sure her brothers had jobs that didn't involve looking over their shoulders, all without being asked. When Nyla tried to thank him, he kissed her silent. Your family kept you safe so you could save mine. It's only right I return the favor. One evening, 3 months after that rainy night in the diner, Nyla found Unwa and Tehran in the garden together. The old woman's memory had returned almost completely, though she still had gaps. But she was herself again, sharp and loving and whole. She saw Nyla approaching and smiled. Come sit with us, dear one. We were just talking about you. Iyama, Tehran warned, but there was no heat in it. What? I'm an old woman. I can say what I like. She patted the bench beside her, and Nyla Saturday, I was telling my stubborn son that he should stop pretending he's not in love with you. It's exhausting to watch. Nyla's breath caught. She looked at Taerin, who had gone very still. She's right, he said quietly, his eyes never leaving Nyla's face. I am in love with you. Desperately, completely in love with you. And I have no idea what to do about it. Why do you have to do anything? Nyla asked, her heart racing. Because love is a weakness in my world. Because people I love become targets. Because you're afraid. Nyla interrupted gently. Not of your enemies. Of this. Of feeling something you can't control. Taerin's jaw worked. Then slowly he nodded. Good, Nyla said. So am I. I'm terrified. But I'm also here. And I'm not going anywhere. Eunhwa made a satisfied sound. Finally. Some sense from both of you. She stood, patting Nyla's shoulder. I'll leave you two alone. I'm tired anyway. After she left, Taerin moved to sit beside Nyla on the bench. They sat in comfortable silence for a long moment, watching the sun set over the water. I bought your apartment building, he said finally. You what? Your apartment building. I bought it, and I'm renovating it, making it safe, secure. So if you want to go back, you can. On your terms. Nyla stared at him. Why would you do that? Because you gave up everything to protect my mother. Your home, your job, your normal life. I wanted to give you the choice to reclaim it. He turned to face her fully. I don't want you here because you're trapped. I want you here because you choose it. Choose me. Tears burned behind Nyla's eyes. You're asking me to choose. I'm asking you to be free, even if that freedom means leaving. Nyla took his face in her hands, this dangerous, powerful man who'd somehow become hers. I choose you. Every day I choose you. Not because I'm trapped. Not because I owe you. But because when I look at you, I see someone worth fighting for. Someone who's fighting to be better. And I want to be part of that fight. Taerin's control finally shattered. He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair, and she felt his shoulders shake. I don't deserve you. Probably not, she agreed, making him laugh wetly. But you're stuck with me anyway. I can live with that. Good. Because I'm not going anywhere, Jang Taerin. You're mine now. And I protect what's mine. He pulled back enough to see her face, his eyes bright with unshed tears and something that looked like wonder. How did you do this? Do what? Make me believe in something beyond survival. Beyond power. Beyond fear. Nyla smiled, pressing her forehead to his. I didn't do anything. I just reminded you that you were already capable of it. You just needed someone to see it first. They sat there as darkness fell. Two people from impossibly different worlds who'd found something neither expected. Not perfection. Not escape from reality. Just the quiet certainty that whatever came next, they would face it together. Inside the estate, Eunhwa watched from a window, a satisfied smile on her face. Her son had finally found what she'd been praying for. Not power. Not revenge. But someone who saw his humanity and refused to let him forget it. Someone who loved him not despite what he was, but because of who he could be. And in that moment the old woman knew. Her son was finally truly safe. Not from his enemies, but from himself. If this story moved you like the video, comment what you would have done in her place, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Because sometimes the most powerful thing in the world isn't control or fear. It's the simple revolutionary act of choosing kindness when the whole world expects you to look away. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.